So Justin McAleese, thanks for coming on the show. We've been doing like a number of like reschedules and working around this whole quarantine, this whole nightmare of scheduling debacle for the last year. So Justin McAleese, filmmaker, BLARE Media. You just had a film come out. Justin, tell me a little bit more about who you are, what you do, what you've been up to.
Yeah, totally. Filmmaker here, Fresno, California, right in the heart of the Central Valley of California, right in the center, and been a filmmaker since college. So going on 20 something odd years now, 20 thereabouts. And yeah, make movies, do a lot of video production in general of some of that's corporate, some of it's commercial. And then we get to do narrative occasionally. So it's a lot of that, a lot of music videos, things. We span all of the things. And most of my work, I would say, is a director of photography. So I'm doing a lot of that. But then occasionally I get to write stuff or direct stuff or do a lot of editing. So yeah, try to fancy myself as a somewhat complete filmmaker. And that's what I like doing. So that's my life. That's almost all of it. That's what I'm up to.
Awesome. So how would you say, in the last year, how were you, how was you and BLARE Media and your fellow colleagues, how were you guys impacted over the last year and a couple months?
Sure. Yeah. It definitely slowed down. It definitely, I think I was in a good position to be able to absorb it better than a lot. So I feel really thankful about that. Excuse me. And we had our like who was at the office and who was at home was the same group of people. Like my partner lives on the same sort of compound that that I do, and so we would sort of come to the office and go home, which is cool. And we have been able to do a lot of editing, and we had some clients that needed more stuff that we could just repurpose old things for. So I think that was really good that they could pivot. Having clients like that is super. There's opportunistic situation there, which was really great. And I think going at that head on and reaching out to people and being like, hey, everything's going to change here. We think, right? You think, we think, yes. Okay. What can we do to make this, to see that we still have something going on here in a couple months? And then, just planning ahead as soon as we found out about how it was all going to go down, trying our best to plan ahead and have stuff to be able to do.
Yeah.
I think having a lot of irons in the fire just in general means that you can pivot to that stuff and finally have the time to take care of it.
Yeah. I mean, that luckily for me, I had a lot of irons in the fire and I was always on set. So I couldn't, there was a couple of passion projects. I never got around to editing or taking so long to finally like jump on that. Hey, listen, I think it was March 12th, we went on quarantine. I think it was March 13th. I plugged everything in and I just started editing away at a couple of web series and a short film. And I'm now finally going to start plugging away because then I realized how to manage time in such a way during quarantine that it's like I'm kind of addicted now to finishing projects, maybe starting new ones. This podcast is the third attempt. We failed twice before.
Oh, wow.
And this is like the third attempt. And I think we kind of got the ball rolling with this one and we're still going with this third attempt. But now it's kind of like this addiction to continue a project or better a project or start a new one, start knocking things out. That addiction to that productivity, that creativity, finding that fine balance between quality and quantity. But
that's great. Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult thing to find when you're just sort of on a moving train. And I think when you can be the conductor, which it sounds like you've been able to be in the last year or so, then you can decide the stops a little bit better. Yep. I think that's a really good place to be. And, I think that's where you find real productivity in the rest of your life, is when you can try to be the conductor more than just being on the train. When I'm on video, when I'm on a movie, say, or a long form thing where I'm doing something for a week on set on the same project, it's very easy to just be on that train and sort of lose sight of everything else, because it becomes very insulated and very like, what would you say, singular minded, process driven. Like that's what I'm working on right now. And these are long days and long situations mentally. So I think anytime you could step outside of that and still be mindful of the other thing you got to work on in the That's very important. And it sounds like you've been able to sort of take the bull by the horns and have that be the primary goal, which is great.
I mean, it was easy. Offline, we were talking a little bit about, me and the wife just brought a kid home, and I'm always telling the same story on this show, but it speaks volumes for like really balancing work and family time, but especially with him being, I think, he was less than a month, anywhere between, 1 day old and 2 months old. I just kept him in the bassinet. I bought an extra bassinet, or someone gave us an extra bassinet, and I had that next to the edit suite. Yeah. And I was editing with headphones, and I would have that white noise or that baby music right next to him, and I'm editing, and I would check on him, and me and the wife, she had to rest quite a bit, right after the birth. So I was taking him for most of the evening and night, and she would like be up during the day and breastfeed or bottle feed. And there's this time management that you realize, okay, let's take advantage of this time now, because I think when he's 4 months old, he's going to be darting around this house. Sure. I'm not going to be able to sit still for very long, unless the money's really good. But yeah. So back to BLARE Media. You mentioned the film that you just had come out, I believe. Have you and BLARE and your company and your colleagues, you guys been back on set since then, knocking out any music videos, films?
Yeah, quite a bit. I mean,
awesome.
we dipped off, and certainly we had, a quarter of the production than we would normally have for a good 6 months. But we're also what's the word for it? I don't know. You know the word. I'm forgetting the word right now, but essential workers, right? Mm-hmm. So we're tied to essential worker sort of status through some of the stuff we do. And so we were able to get out there and still have on set time, which is great, because without that, you do sort of lose structure over time.
Yeah.
When you don't get out and then come back and then get out. If you're just sitting and editing the whole time, you can just sort of wallow in that, and it's not very much fun. And every day is the same, I guess. So yeah, it was great getting on set occasionally and being able to do very specific projects. And a lot of those things too was us pivoting enough with live things to be able to do projects that we hadn't done in quite the same way. So a lot of like virtual conferences and the CEO getting over here and talking. Normally that would be a conference, and now they're talking to all these people in a different way, or we set up sort of green screen things that we hadn't done before, and embracing all the Zoom stuff, obviously what we're doing now, like me setting up this camera and all this stuff and getting some little lights and all that nonsense, like doing that. And then we started doing a show that we hadn't done before that was all Zoom, and now we're on Clubhouse and all that in a different way. So we did a lot of that internal promotion. We were also setting up a lot of that virtual stuff that hadn't existed like the day before, really. So that's where we went to be able to still be running cameras in one way or another for at least 6 months.
Yeah, Clubhouse is the new TikTok. It's the new podcasting or idea platform, I guess is one way to put it. And I was trying to jump on that and trying to like crisscross things. Clubhouse would not let me tap it into Wirecast or Stream or StreamView or whatever to then put that.
Sure.
And so, but that's definitely,
I think we went through some of those similar things.
Yeah.
We tried to like hook it up with Zoom and be able to do both simultaneously and this and that. And it seemed like they're just different, what would you say, different audiences, different platforms, obviously, but like different platforms and people psychologically as well. So we end up doing, one Zoom chat thing that's separate, and then we do the Clubhouse things that are separate from that, because they're just different ideas.
Now, is the Clubhouse things recorded? Is there a backup? Is there like a
yes, I believe we are backing it. I believe so. Yeah, because we're then putting them up. So I haven't been here in a while.
Okay.
I was never huge on the Clubhouse stuff. That was more my partner doing that. But I mean, I was on them a number of times, but I'm trying to remember if we do that. I know that all our Zoom stuff we record and put up later.
Of course, yeah.
For
sure.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's, like me and the partners, we're always trying to like jump on the next trend, kind of experiment with it.
Sure.
I mean, I've kind of stuck with YouTube for the longest, I think, for obvious reasons. But like TikTok, when TikTok was fairly new, I just kind of dumped the same thing on that. Get multiple different audiences seeing what specific things that I'm putting out. But
yeah, I mean, that's the best way to do it. You got to reach people where they want to be reached.
Yeah.
So to the extent that it's not like twice as much work to get half as many people because it's just a weird platform, then yeah, you got to kind of branch out, see what works, and then pull back to your core competencies. But you should always be ready to dangle the fruit in front of someone else that you don't know yet.
Right. I mean, like the workflow and the habits become, okay, I've got this hour and a half, say for the example, the podcast, I got this hour and a half podcast, and then I'll just take the first minute and I'll put that up on Instagram, on Facebook, TikTok, all the other grams and all the other platforms or whatever.
50 other things.
There are, what is it, Tumblr and Twitter and all those other things.
Dear God.
And then just a link. And then there's just that link, for full episodes, go here. Because the point is to try to get them. And I lost your video.
Yeah, I lost me for a second. Video.
Okay.
I was trying to get it to go.
It
resets every half hour, so I can hit the button, but I don't know why I did that. Whatever.
And no sweat. But like I'm always so every product has, and so it's not like you were saying, twice as much work for half the audience, or half the work for the same audience, but then an extra little 10% make this quick little thing, and then it's a basic upload to all the other platforms to get them directed towards the YouTube or whatever. Because you're right, every audience is going to be different. You got your Twitter people, you got your Instagram people, you got your TikTok people, you got your Clubhouse people.
Yeah.
But guaranteed all of those people are YouTube people at this point in life. I think it goes without saying. And so, I mean, think about it. You being a filmmaker, how many years ago were you like, how the hell do I get a movie made and distributed? And when YouTube came along, that was it. It was like, this is the way to get our stuff seen. And it's still the way to get stuff seen. I know it's so bogged down with so much content, but still.
Yeah. YouTube definitely came out after I'd already made a feature film, not a big one that anyone's seen or anything like that, but like went through the whole process and was already way out of film school and had been making a lot of, we'd been making a TV show for a few years and doing that sort of stuff. And YouTube sounded, I remember specifically hearing like how much it was bought for by Google, and you're like, that's what a waste of money. Those people are idiots. And just like having no concept of any of what it was going to be or what it was or any of those things
until
until the whole thing just changed. Yeah, it just didn't, that was day one. I didn't know what I was talking about yet, but who could have foreseen quite the juggernaut that it has become? I mean, that's just what you do on the internet. If you want to watch video, it's YouTube. So that didn't seem like that was a possibility, I guess, or even oddly enough, it didn't seem like it was a niche that needed to be filled at the time. I don't know. There was other stuff. There was other ways to watch videos, and you just there was just a bunch of different platforms that were all whatever. You're like, I don't know. It's a video. I watch it here. It's there. It's on a website. It doesn't matter. I see it. Who cares? And then when YouTube came along, it was the de facto thing. So I think you always need to be ever mindful of what those things could be and be looking out for like what the next big thing is so that you can at least get a little bit of it. And then if you don't get the kind of traction you want, then maybe you move back to what you're used to doing that works better. I think the Pareto principle, the Pareto effect is in full effect there in most cases. And that idea is like, there's only, when it comes to classical music, the example is, I forget what it is, but 75% of all classical music that is done in by philharmonics and all that is only 4 composers. Mozart, Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, and one other one. And so it's always going to be only a few things. It's like you have your Beatles and your Rolling Stones and 2 other bands, and like that's like 75% of the air in the room when it comes to that style of music, that classic rock. That's how many albums they sold. And so that's always there. And so in the same way, you're like, YouTube is going to be the vast, you have your couple platforms, and those are going to be the vast majority of everything you get out of whatever you're putting in is going to come from there. You can put stuff on 50 other platforms, but you'll get almost nothing out of any of those, and it's probably not worth it. So you're always trying to look expand and then contract.
And you said Pareto effect?
Yeah, Pareto, Pareto principle, I think usually they call it. But the idea that most everything comes from only a small part of things. And then once you expand out, like even from there, most everything comes from a smaller subset of those things. So
right.
like I was using the example of music.
Like genre.
Yeah. So all the records that are sold are only a few bands, and then all the songs that are sold are only a few songs. So when it comes down to it, you have a million artists and a million songs out there, but really only a handful of songs are getting almost all of the sales and almost all of the recognition and all that stuff. That's just how people are. And so you don't want to chase the stuff that's way at the bottom that you're trying to get some usefulness out of when it comes to platforms or whatever we're talking about. When there's no net gain there. You always want to focus on the things that work and really try to make those what would you say? The bedrock by which you build your stuff is just like keep that strong.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't agree more. There are these trends, and like you're saying, and another word would be trends or fashions or styles. And if you're going to make it within the market that has that, first off, you're getting involved. If someone's getting involved into something, it's because they like it. I'm getting involved in filmmaking because I like superhero movies. I like Star Wars movies. I like action, adventure, sci-fi stuff.
Those are a great example. I mean, it's like Marvel sucks all the life out of the room. It's everything. Everything is Marvel when you look at all of the box office receipts. Well, we didn't have that last year, but like where's all the money in the movies going to? It's going to Marvel, and it's going to superhero movies in the last 5 years. Like that's an exact example of that stuff.
But
sorry to interrupt.
But no, you're absolutely right. But the point I'm trying to make is I'm still going to do what I love and I want to do. And I think
absolutely
going back to the Pareto principle, and that's something I'm going to look into and definitely discuss maybe further down the line with you again, have you on whatever. But
sure,
that stands out to me because there are folks that will they want to make money. They don't know how. They don't know what they want to do, except for they want to make a living at something, and they just look at what is popular at the minute, popular for the week. The monster of the week.
Sure,
and sure, but
that's a tough thing to chase.
Yeah, exactly.
You're never going to get ahead in that. You're always going to be one step behind in that, and someone else is setting that trend. You're just trying to ape it for the week. I mean, that's tough, man. So you got to do. What we're always the generic idea of this, but it's true. It's like you're always trying to provide value. You're always trying to be a thought leader in whatever you're doing. So if you know more about something than everyone else does, if you're better at something than everyone else is, if you have a more dialed in, forward facing public thing that everyone who sees it's like, oh, that's that guy that does that. He's really good at it. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really a lot of times what you want to aim for. People don't necessarily love generalists. They don't, because they want to be able to categorize things. So they want to be able to look at someone or some company or some studio or whatever it happens to be, some book writer. I mean, there's a reason why Harlequin novels are all written by the same people, or we know exactly what a Harlequin novel is, because when you know what I'm talking about, right? Like love story, with the pirate on the cover, that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
a book I have never, those right. So people don't want to go women don't want to go get a Harlequin novel and then have it be some complex political discussion. They don't give a shit about that. They just want it to be the thing that it's supposed to be. Yeah,
it's not going to be a Harlequin book written by Stephen King. It's going to be a Harlequin book written by. It's always going to be a Daniel Steele
whoever writes those things, right? And it's the same pretty much with every kind of media. Like people want to be 5% surprised. They never want to be 50% surprised. Like it's so hard to do that. So they want to be. You got to be in that pocket. You got to keep giving the people what they want, but slightly different. I mean, like that's literally all of art ever. Give them what they want, slightly different.
And so like going back to comic book movies. Comic book movies before Iron Man 1, comic book movies always had the same kind of structure, good versus bad. And even comic book movies took from Star Wars movies, where the first movie, good guys win, second movie, bad guys win. Third one, good guys win again for good. And then that might be where they're boxed in. Whereas the MCU definitely takes that 5 to 10% difference. Every single movie is a comic book movie. Let's be honest. It's a superhero movie. It's going to be crazy action, outlandish special effects. But the Iron Mans, they focus on tech, and the Captain Americas, the Iron Mans, they focus on tech and the dangers of technology, advanced technology. The Captain Americas are espionage films. Ant-Man's are heist films. The Thor movies are kind of like Macbeth films. And then when they all get together as Avengers, they're huge team up action, Star Wars epic films.
It's and the Expendables with superpowers.
Yes. Expendables unite. But yeah, and it's funny you mentioned, I mean, Stallone's a freaking Guardian of the Galaxy now. And I'm excited. And Stallone is a member of the Suicide Squad. He's on the credits anyway. Only Stallone could pull off both brands and be like, "You're not going to tell me what to do. You either want me or you're not." And he's in both universes. Yeah. But like you say, they take that little 10% and they make niches. And so, for me personally, someone was like, "Man, I can't watch all 40 of these movies." And I said, if you want to kind of catch up with the MCU in a way that I would do it, because here's what I like: all the Avengers and all the Captain Americas, because those are the ones that stood out to me. I love the Captain Americas more than the Iron Mans and the Thors and the Ant-Mans. The Ant-Mans are kind of funny, but in chronological order, the Avengers and the Captain Americas, and that's really all I need to watch, because there's that 10% difference where it's like this war spy espionage movie, and then there's the big one, and then the war espionage, and then the big one, but that's what Kevin Feige found was that little 10%. He's fitting into the mass market, that Pareto principle of there's a superhero movie. You know you're going to love it. It's a superhero movie. But then there's this little bit that's slightly different, and this is what makes us stand out with Captain America or Iron Man or Hulk or whoever.
It's you gotta stay in your lane, I think, in most cases, because that's what people will come to expect. If you're popular enough, and that's what they want. They want more of the same always.
And I think, even I just finished Schindler's List, one of the worst movies to just watch out of the blue, during the day. It's great, man. But it's such a rough movie, extremely rough movie. That's a great word for it.
It should be.
I was saying it's a horrible movie because it's so great, but it's a rough movie. But there's a guy that
did you watch Requiem for a Dream? Did you ever see that?
I've seen it once, and there's no need for me to watch that again either.
That's the answer, right?
I mean,
rough, man. It's I got to call your mom and apologize for life and just being so shitty. Like it's rough.
I miss you, Mom. I'm so sorry for everything I did as a scumbag teenager. I'm sorry.
It's not even about that, but you just feel bad about stuff. So, but it's an effective movie. It's a terrible, great movie. And that's how Schindler's List is. And one of them is obviously historical, which is even worse. I mean, it's by the book, historically accurate, but there's a filmmaker again that did that 50%. Spielberg was Indiana Jones, E.T.'s, Goonies, Back to the Futures, Jaws, like some horror adventures and sci-fi adventures and kid adventures and action adventures. And then all of a sudden he does one of the most roughest movies ever made, Schindler's List, out of the blue, black and white. All like completely 180'd his entire style, his entire everything, I mean, he did some Empire of the Sun, Color Purple. There were some movies in there. He'd been
that's true,
an important filmmaker for 20 years at that point. So,
the Color Purple, you're right. The Color Purple was a bit rough too.
He had been working so long that I think we gave him that pass. I think the problem is when any artist, any filmmaker, any whatever tries to do that on their third movie, like they let's say Talladega Nights and Step Brothers they make, and then the next movie is Schindler's List. that's going to be a big pivot, and that's too much. Like audiences just can't take that, nor do we believe you that you're going to be good at it, and it just feels wrong. So it's like you gotta over time work your way up to that, to being able to bring something to the table like that is so counter of what we do think you are about. Because you're 100% right. Like he's the Indiana Jones dude, he's the Jaws dude, he's
and going back to those years,
guy.
Going back to those years, that's the name I had synonymous with third encounter, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and E.T. as a kid, and as I grew up, and now here I am, 13. And maybe it was I was just at that perfect age and that perfect time where I grew up with all the Goonies and the Indiana Joneses and all those types. And then I'm 13, transitioning from middle school to high school, and I see Schindler's List. And I'm like, it's like double what the hell, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's good. I mean, that's what's so great about art, is they can make something that you feel like is brand new. You feel like it's more effective than anything could be in a book, especially movies, and just really lives with you. Only watch it once and it lives with you forever. I mean, that's great. And whether that's like the actual scenes or the actual specific numbers or anything like that, that doesn't have to be just like that feeling. I think we'll never leave you of some pieces of art, specifically some movies. And, you know, that's what any filmmaker's going for. They're trying to affect you in a way that nothing else could. And that's a beautiful opportunity.
And, you know, going back to, like you said, Talladega Nights, you know, let's say Will Ferrell, for example. Oh, hell, I just forgot the other actor.
John C. Reilly.
You know, so those guys, Will Ferrell was on SNL, but John C. Reilly kind of came up doing a lot of, you know, indie stuff at first. And he was always so goofy that when those guys teamed up, it's just old school Talladega Nights, Anchorman, you know, all the Sherlock Holmes and all these crazy comedies. And then they're still going to kind of delve into the indie scene and do like indie comedies or those
Everything Must Go. He's in that one, right?
Where it's like very art house comedies and very like realistic kind of comedies. Because it took Vince Vaughn a long time. It even took people to hate Vince Vaughn for the comedies to then turn around and do Hacksaw Ridge and played a drill sergeant to a T. Nobody played a drill sergeant so well. And except for Arlie Ermey. And Vince Vaughn. Vince Vaughn, of all people.
And he was, I mean, Arlie Ermey was a drill sergeant.
And he was a drill sergeant.
He was helping write the dialogue and all that stuff, and helping instruct the actor who was going to be in Full Metal Jacket. And then they're like, let's just let this dude do it. He's better than whoever we're going to hire and whatever we're going to write. So totally.
And but then going to Vince Vaughn, who was the comedy, and then like terrible comedies, shitty comedies, and then all of a sudden he's so he does Hacksaw Ridge, then he does freaking a Brawl on Block 99, which was just
I never saw it.
Brutal. Wow. Have you ever seen Bone Tomahawk?
No.
With Kurt Russell?
No.
So there's this new filmmaker, and he makes ultra brutal films. I mean, they're great. It's such great acting, such great story. It's such a slow burn until like the last 30 minutes is just a complete
all out mayhem.
All out mayhem. And so Brawl on Cell Block 9 or something like that, Vince Vaughn did, totally out, finally kind of working outside his shell and just being such a dark, mean dude. And now the same filmmakers put him and Mel Gibson in a movie where they're both crooked cops, or they had like this one incident and now they're kind of blackballed as cops. They're trying to go after the people that set them up or something. And it's probably going to be, again, another ballistic mayhem type of movie. But it took him a while, and he steadily did it, almost to the point where he wanted people to hate him for comedies. And so then he does Hacksaw Ridge.
And you remember what he says. You remember what he says in, granted, he didn't write it, Favreau wrote it, but what he says in Swingers, he's like, Mikey, I don't want you to be the guy in the PG movie that everyone's just hoping makes it. I want you to be the guy in the R-rated movie that you're not quite sure about, but you think there might be something there, right? That's, like, I mean, that might be a good indication of where Vince Vaughn went with this career.
You like him. you don't know if you trust them,
Exactly.
but you like them and you're rooting for them. Exactly. And you know, speaking of swingers, I always talk about swingers, but
yeah,
I mean,
it's a good movie.
talk about guys making a movie. Really, no major locations. I I don't know how much of that dialogue and that interaction was improv, but the best scene obviously is all grows up in the diner. And you can tell their third buddy is just sitting there laughing. Favreau and John Favreau, Vince Vaughn are going back and forth, challenging each other. Yeah, I think she likes you. Yes, man, I know she likes me. And the third guy is just sitting there like he can't keep a straight face. And it's one of those moments where you feel that magic come through the celluloid, come through into the screen, where these if the guys on set are truly having fun.
Yeah. Which can be a double-edged sword at times.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it feels very fun on set, and then you get home and you're like, this is just a bunch of in-jokes that no one else would ever give a shit about. Yeah. But sometimes it works. I mean, not to say the opposite of what you're saying, because absolutely sometimes you can tell like these people really enjoyed what they were doing and they really thought they were making good stuff, and they really were making exactly what was powerful or hilarious or important to them. And that's why it works, you know, because you can't, like, sort of like we were talking about before, you can't aim for a moving target. You want to be able to aim for a thing that you understand, and that just amp it up just a little bit, just like be out on the edge of the ledge, juggling chainsaws, as David Fincher says. So it's like you want to know enough about what you're doing to be able to know what you're trying to accomplish, and then just amp up the difficulty a little bit on yourself, because then that's when happy accidents happen and incredible things can transpire that really make it better than the sum of its parts.
Yeah. I mean, you have happy accidents like, Usual Suspects. Who the hell was it? I think Stephen Baldwin, farted in that when they were reading the line, he farted. And they're doing the lineup, and they all just couldn't get through it. And that's even David Fincher screaming at him.
They were sort of mocking Bryan Singer. They didn't care about it. He was a young first-time director, and there was a bunch of problems. And so them just, that's the story I heard too.
And it was comedic gold.
Which is great. And it leads us to believe that those characters are screw-offs the entire time. Those characters, and that they just didn't take any of this stuff seriously. It could have had such a different vibe if they would have, it would have been important to them, but because they were laughing and because it was all a big joke to them, we just look at them in a way different manner throughout the whole thing. They have way more, they're a lot more bulletproof throughout the movie. And so when we see them get knocked off one by one, to an extent, it's a lot scarier, I think.
Yeah. And
there's a flick of the cigarette too, when they're out with Redfoot out by Long Beach and all that, and he flicks a cigarette. And he gets Benicio's reaction to that is all real, because it wasn't supposed to happen when he got in his face and all that. So, you hope those things go down for sure.
Yeah. And that's where, again, preparation, always maybe a second camera rolling, always a B camera rolling, because some gold is going to happen. And like, did you catch that? And you might have. And there's a little bit of preparation, like you said, you got to be a master to an extent in order to challenge yourself and add that little extra challenge and experimentation.
You want to set yourself up for maximum success, so that when things maybe don't go as planned, you're always ready with a backup idea. And when things do go as planned, you have opportunity to then get one extra or one more idea, or really flip it on its head. Because that's a lot of times when you're shooting, it's like, we got that, now let's try something different. Now double what you did, or cut in half what you did, and we'll see how that works. Getting 10 versions of the exact same thing isn't usually that useful. So if you got one and you know it, and that's preparation, that's 100% preparation, is like knowing what you want, so that when you get it, you can move on to an alternate. That's always important in any artistic thing, because if you're just aimlessly creating to get to something, then it's never going to work.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what's next on the agenda? What's the next set? What's next? The next film coming out, or the next film set to be shot? What's the next plan? What's next on the agenda for the next 6 months to a year from now?
Right now we got Better. So bettermovie.com. You can go and that's a documentary that we made and took us a couple years. It's about diabetes, so diabetes and obesity, and the worst health epidemic that's ever faced the world. I mean, pandemic's one thing, that's a somewhat temporary thing, but epidemic wise, I mean, it's weight, especially in America. Yeah. I mean, it's just obesity is really that's what has attacked our country more than anything, and all of our health problems practically stem off of that in one way or another. So that's what this movie is about. It's about sane eating, and we interviewed 4 Harvard doctors. We went to Harvard and did all the stuff, and we interviewed 25 or so, I forget exactly, diabetes heroes, we call them. And so people that have were in a bad place in life in one way or another, health, weight wise, and made changes sort of fitting in with what we talk about in the movie, of some real actual answers, actionable stuff of what you can do to start losing weight tomorrow, to live a healthier life tomorrow, eat, think, live better.
Yeah. And I think, subject matters like that are super important. I was just talking to somebody about documentaries. I've got family members that have different tastes in films, and none of them can stand the Marvel movies or the DC movies, unless if Pierce Brosnan was in one of them, they'd go to the theater to go see that. But my mom, other than that, my mom has no interest. But most of my family, they're a bit older generation. They like the rom-coms. They like the character studies. And and a couple of family members, they're big on history, and they're big on documentaries and that sort of thing. And the biggest argument is like, their documentaries, I think most times, are a stepping stone for a feature film narrative. And I know there's I know there's a lot of filmmakers that just stick with documentaries. Maybe they have a passion for it. Maybe they have a thrill for it. And I've been pitched for documentaries. I'm saying, yeah, absolutely, I'll do a documentary, because the second that thing's done, that is the pitch for the next bigger project of that idea, subject matter, universe, whatever.
Yeah. There's something good about learning. I think we've had some interesting things happen in the last decade or so that I really like. The Big Short, I think, is a good example of that, of a movie that is a documentary, sort of, and it's also a narrative, sort of, and it really blurs the lines, and you have these people breaking the fourth wall, but not in a traditional way. I really like that. Vice continued doing that same sort of thing. I mean, I like movies like that can sort of get rid of the facade that we pretend like we need as viewers, and blur the lines a little bit, because things are so interactive today too. What is the media? What is the media's effect on what we're seeing real time with what we're seeing and all that? It's like it's a weird thing. The Derek Chauvin trial and all that. It's like, or maybe even it was the Bill Cosby trial. Any of these things are basically impossible to do without someone knowing what was going on, right? There's no jury of your peers that were undiluted by the mass media of that story. That's like basically impossible. And if it were possible, would you really want that person deciding anything? They're so out of it that they didn't even know about these people. So you're in a situation to where that stuff is so self-reflexive all the time, that why not take a step inside and outside simultaneously to be able to look at how all these things interact? I think that's really the clever version of how all this goes, and not pretend like they're all separate. Somehow the news is separate from what you experience in a movie, that is separate from what you experience while watching a movie, and then all those things are different. I mean, that's just silly. And so when you can do it right, going in that direction, I think is really entertaining, and blurs the lines between what's documentary and what's movie, and why they would be different in the first place, when art imitates life and life imitates art.
Yeah. And you raised a good point. Big Short. And there was the one, Bombshell, with all the ladies that worked for totally. Fox News, and again, breaking the fourth wall. And then the one with Meryl Streep about the pensions, the retirement funds being stolen. And I think it was John Malkovich and Christoph Waltz and Gary Oldman were in it.
I didn't see that one.
Well,
that's a lot of people. That's a lot of Oscars in one room.
Yeah, it was a Netflix original. I can't remember the name of this one.
Okay.
But it's Meryl Streep plays this senior citizen whose pension was robbed, and it turns out there's this firm, and they kind of like they shift money, and they got offshores of this, that, and she actually started doing her own investigation. And then towards the end of the movie, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's one of those fourth wall breaks.
Yeah.
That Meryl Streep just starts taking off all her makeup and wigs.
Oh,
and changing into her clothes,
into being Meryl Streep,
into just being into Meryl Streep. Talk to the camera. It's like it's like a 10-minute long duration take.
Shit got real,
and she just started saying like, here's the problem with America today. Sort of piece.
Yeah,
and again, it's going back to what YouTube started, what TikTok started, what Facebook started, where you got people talking to the camera, just unloading, telling stories. Then people started getting more creative with Final Cut and iMovie and so on, and adding footage. And YouTube kind of started the whole new media documentary, like the new informative, InfoWars and stuff like that. And then you got InfoWars and all these other channels, and so they're playing along with that with on a such bigger budget, and really breaking down the norms and experimenting. Because it's a true story, but now here it is Meryl Streep breaking that down.
That's neat. I should try to watch that. It's one reason to me too. I'm the biggest fan in the world of The Simpsons seasons 1 through 10 or 12 or however you want to say it. But and then it fell off precipitously thereafter. But I've been a fan of South Park the entire time, and something that's great about South Park is they do have that ability to literally make a whole episode about what happened that week. Like, and that's crazy how fast they can move. They haven't been making
the writing and animation. It's not live action.
Fast.
It's not just putting a camera up. It's animation.
Yeah. I still don't really understand. I watched the documentary. I know how they do it. I still don't really understand how they can do it so fast, but nevertheless, they are able to create those stories that are as topical or more topical than anything, because they don't actually need to get all their stories straight, which is good, because they're just making up some bullshit about it anyway. It's just a joke. It's an analog. It's a proxy for whatever happens to be happening. And so it's so great. But yeah, that's they came in and were able to do that because of how fast they work, and lampoon something that we didn't even know needed to be satirized or lampooned yet, which is great, because that's how real life is. You're interacting with the thing immediately. Yeah.
And I think that's why live streaming started popping in. I mean, you've got a guy, what the hell is his name? MC Mark something or other. Anyway, 900, he reached 900,000. Every 100,000 subscribers he got, he freestyled for that many hours. So just recently he got 900K subscribers, so he freestyled live for 9 hours.
That dude's crazy. And there's that. I've seen him before. I forgot his name. He's nuts.
Mark something, Nat something. But that's that interaction, and that's the live streaming, and that's what saved me during the quarantine. I always jumped on the live streaming and the podcasting, which, like you, turned into those remote conferences, webinars, seminars, remote events, hybrid, now moving into hybrid events. And I love to experiment. I love to be challenged. Okay, we got a bunch of MCs at the Marriott in Nashville, but we got a bunch of guest speakers. What are they called? Well, guest speakers is fine
for sure
at their houses throughout the whole planet.
Yeah, totally. And you cut them all in.
Cut them all in with Zoom. Cut them all in with whatever. And they can hear them at the Marriott can hear them. Everybody can hear me directing and producing. But the audience can't hear me, because then there's that like mix minus or whatever action going on. And
the pandemic happened at a good time. We were just far enough on technology to be able to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Not quite. It wasn't like what do you say? Completely matured, certainly. But the
Candles and
bleeding edge
books.
worked well enough to be able to unite us all through Zoom. It really is interesting, the timing on that. Because if it happened 5 years ago, it would have been such a different reality. Could you imagine?
Without my Fire TVs?
Yeah.
Because it's just everything's
so much different.
The TV is mounted to the wall. Everything's inside of it. And it's just all I need is this little remote. If I had to like switch the DVD or find extra DVD players and you got to have remotes, then do we have enough DVDs? We're going to be watching the same VHS.
Who's going to deliver all these DVDs?
The VHSs? Yeah, man. Got to rewind it.
Sure.
Jimmy, you forgot to rewind the tape. You know, we got to sit here for 5 minutes and rewind the tape so we can watch the same movie for the 10th time again anyway.
Rough.
Yeah, man. I mean, you're right. We kind of were just at this perfect time where all this remote stuff was 85%.
Yeah.
And I think 2-3 months into quarantine, everything was like 100% too easy. I know how to work around this.
Yeah, really weird, right? I mean, I don't think there's any plan there or anything. It just sort of things lined up and in a way that wasn't nearly as shitty as it could have been in terms of that stuff.
Yeah.
So
well, touching upon that and better movie, what drives you?
To get to the heart of the matter, to express in the simplest of terms, in the most direct, effective way, what I find, how my worldview interacts with what the actual world is. So asking questions and then finding answers, and hopefully not finding answers that are too biased by what I think, but are biased in terms of what is actually happening. So that's what better would be, you know, us asking questions about what's the ideal diet, what is the optimal way to live your life in such a way that you're understanding what feeds you and how your body works and how a sane lifestyle would look. I mean, I think those are definitely useful. There are a few things that are more universally needed in the world than that. Like, what do I eat today? And I think that's a great place to start. So in terms of that project, that's absolutely what drives me. In terms of other stuff, it's like, how do I get, David Fincher would say, I use a couple of his quotes already, is, our job as directors is to know when and how to give out information. It's basically all it is. So and a cinematographer does a very similar thing. So you're trying to design a shot in the way that the audience immediately knows what to look at. They're focused on the things that they need to be focused on, and there's enough going on in the frame to where it has some life to it. It's not boring. There's something that's just aesthetically pleasing or aesthetically jarring or whatever it happens to be that you're aiming for right off the bat, but that it's not distracting. So you're constantly adding and eliminating. And that's the goal, I think, of any piece of art. There's enough there to be a full picture, or to be full -1, so that your brain's like trying to fill in a little bit, but without having it just be a muddled mess of stuff. So you're constantly shaving off just enough, we're sculptors in a lot of ways without taking off too much. You don't want to take off the nose and then there's no story there, but you want to take off everything else until you have the sculpture within. So, I mean, anytime I'm approaching story, it's that way. And especially on a movie like Better, you are taking, what could be an 8-hour movie, a 10-hour movie. We based it. It was originally it was always meant to be a movie, but we also made a series out of it. That was almost like 8 hours long. So there's a lot of information. There are a lot of stories, and we had to cull that and really refine it to where it's just the maximum amount of information that an audience can take in an hour and a half to understand what their diet could be.
Yeah. Touching upon asking questions. I mean, being an AD, I've had to ask a lot of questions, and you get a lot of directors or producers like, I already answered that. It's like, dude, just answer it again. Clarification. Remind us.
Yeah.
What else are we doing? We're either going to shoot or we're going to discuss it. Yeah. Answer the question. And especially in the military, I would be always the one raising my hand and asking a question about a clarifying question on top of a clarifying question on top of a clarifying question. And like, what the hell is with you? And by the time I get to, you know, staff sergeant, I'm the one where like I've got soldiers under me that have a million questions. I'm like, ask away. I'll take notes. I'll take the hit. If they start getting annoyed with these questions, I'll take the hit. Don't you worry about it. I'm going to ask the questions, and I'm going to re-ask more and re-ask more so that the job's done the right way the first time.
As long as there's somewhat reasonable questions, as long as they are in the ballpark of what we're talking about, and they're not trying to like invalidate the whole idea of what we're trying to accomplish. You know, you don't want to hear questions. Well, they're not even usually questions. They're more like, oh, this scene's cool, but did we think about doing this on Mars? And you're like, shut up, dude. We're doing the scene. We've already dialed it. We're already here. We're already doing the thing. Like focus, you know, we can change 1% now. We can't change 80%.
Right.
But I think asking questions is a way to refine people's understanding of what they actually want without and it allows them to be specific. I really think that's what it is. Maybe what you're talking about with regards to directors, because a lot of times if I'm in that situation, say it's a DP, which on a lot of the sets I'm on is similar to being part of what an AD does, because I'm trying to establish like what our shot list is going to be for the day, because it's not quite dialed in. It's sort of there, but it's not. And so I'm like, okay, we're going to get we're going to be here for 4 hours. How do we maximize that time? What are we trying to accomplish? What's the order of these things? You know, AD stuff, assistant director for people who don't, first AD specifically for anyone who doesn't know. I'm assuming they know your
and worst jobs on
set.
Man,
just the most thankless, shitty job in a lot of ways, but also very good because you're at the helm. But when people have to answer questions and explain like I'm 5, you know, that thing, explain like I'm 5. When people have to do that, then it's a very good test of what they actually know about what they're talking about and how fleshed out their idea is. And if people can do that over and over again, then it usually means that they have a mastery of the subject. And so you want to test and you want to help them refine their mastery of their subject while they're on set of what they think their thing is. Because a lot of times people are also under false pretenses of what they think their thing is. They think it's a horror movie, and then they're not explaining a horror movie. They're explaining a comedy because they don't understand some of the nuances, because those are only maybe 1 degree apart at times, or they share the same world. So when you let people make their own bed, then they have to lie in it. And if they thought it was a different bed, then that will be a problem. So yeah, asking questions that they get them to understand what they don't know, I think is super important.
Clarifying questions over and over again. Why are you asking me that?
Because you didn't give me a reasonable answer last time, and you don't know that you didn't do that.
But my experience versus your experience.
Yeah,
I've seen this fail. You might not have even tried this before. I haven't seen it fail. I haven't seen it succeed. But this is a different movie than that. And this is a different movie. This is a different movie than the other two of the one that failed and one that succeeded. This is a third and totally different movie that we're trying something similar. So let's fine tune this.
Sure. Yeah.
Or let's just break up the shot into 3 shots. Wide, medium, close, 2 shot, boom.
Sometimes that's all you need. Coverage is not necessarily wrong.
Yeah.
But if you can approach it in a more meaningful way, more specific way, more esoteric way, then maybe that's what you want as well.
But a lot of times you get those guys like, what's with all these questions? And it's like, just tell me you don't have the answer and we'll figure it out. Let's be honest.
You're trying to help them, right?
Communication, you know what I mean? and like you said, Fincher. And well, what I remember Tarantino saying, a great director is a great communicator. Get that information to all your departments and you don't have to fricking do it. They'll do it. If you communicate to them, this is the year, Salvation Army kind of close, you know, poop all over the wall. It's a dingy bar,
sure,
you know, so on and so forth. When you show up, you don't have to say anything. It's all set. You directed them.
You chose the right people too.
Yes,
you chose the right people. You give them the guidance, and they go and make everything perfect. I mean, that's
and people they're better at
communicate with. Sure, they're better at it than you are. Hopefully, if you hired people, they should be better at everything you do than you are, basically, except for directing, hopefully.
Yes.
If you're the director.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm going to hire someone that's a better wardrobe and hairstylist than me. I can't cut hair.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest, and you know, I'm sure you have more, I'm sure you have your hands in more fires and irons than I do, but I'm to the point where it's like, okay, I'm gonna write. And if I direct, I'm not going to edit, let somebody else jump on that editing.
Yeah.
They're probably better at it than I am. They're probably hungrier. They probably actually
bring
want to
something
do it.
New to it.
I don't even want to do it anymore. I'm too old for that shit.
For
to
sure.
where
Understood.
It's like, because I could go off and write and direct something else. And I could still direct the editing process to an extent.
Yeah.
I could still direct that.
Sorry, I was get a package coming in here trying to solve it.
no
Yes,
problem.
you could edit it, but it might not be as good as what someone else could do because they come to it with a fresh perspective and they can really bring something new to the table that you hadn't even thought of before. Or they look at it and be like, yeah, that's what you wanted, but it doesn't do that for me. It doesn't accomplish what you said your goal was. Maybe you have a different goal now. Yeah,
exactly.
It's hard. I got to bounce.
Okay.
I got to shoot that I got to get to. I got to load.
All right. So before I let you go, one last point of advice to the viewers. One last point of advice. One last point to make, or one last bit of advice for the viewers as creatives coming out of this quarantine. And
well, one thing I would say, one thing I learned, and you know, advice is whatever. Everyone's got it, and it's all stinks like that. However that phrase goes, right? No, but one thing I would say is that like during this whole pandemic debacle is like, I realize there's a lot of times I probably shouldn't take a stand on stuff of like me knowing what the CDC should know, or me knowing how they should run a government or a country or an entire world. Like I would have any knowledge of that stuff. Is just like bang back, do what you can do, be as maximize your world to the extent that you can, and then try to let other things happen. The chips fall the way that they will, because ultimately you don't have that much of an effect over it. So I think that's one thing I definitely learned is like, don't speak out the first week and be like, well, here's how pandemics work. Like, come on, man, you don't know that. Here's how they should do all mask laws always. And like, dude, like how big do you think your brain is to understand what thousands, millions of other people who are in charge of that stuff don't know? It's stupid. So that's what I would say. And then in terms of creativity, it's like there's a lot of stuff out there. Try to find something that doesn't already exist and make that. Tell the story. I mean, I guess the best piece of advice is like, tell the story that you are uniquely tailored and designed to tell better than anyone else. You really want to aim toward that. Don't tell the story that someone else is already telling, but tell it in a mediocre manner because you don't have the access to the money or the funds or the ideas or the whatever that they do. Like, tell your story the best that you can and make it palatable for an audience, but make it the thing that you are uniquely set to do.
Absolutely. Well, Justin MCALEECE, I won't keep you too long. Don't go away just quick. We'll talk like maybe another 30 seconds offline. But Justin MCALEECE, BLARE Media, bettermovie.com,
brickmadness.com, brickmadness.com if you want something funny.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Justin, I can't thank you enough. Stick around and we'll chat just 1 second. The viewers out there, if you want to become an honorary member of the Zombie Squad, send me some, hit me up on any of the socials. Send me the name that you want to be credited as a honorary member of Zombie Squad. Send me your favorite 1 or 2 profile pictures, avatars, what have you, your profile pictures on Instagram, Facebook, whatever, and we can squad you up. I will make you an honorary member of the Zombie Squad, and I'll design all this stuff. I'll design a t-shirt, I'll design your logo, your whole Zombie Squad kind of profile if you want to be an honorary member of Zombie Squad, and give you the options to buy a t-shirt, to buy a phone case, to buy a pillow, to buy a tapestry, to buy a hoodie, to whatever the hell you want. But if you want to be an honorary member of the Zombie Squad, let me know. And
but they got to put in the work though.
All they have to do is send me 1 or 2 of their profile pics, and they'll be an honorary